Hey everybody, it's Paul from Screenwriting Mentor. Today we're going to talk about a little bit more about the WGA strike and a little bit more about what does it mean for people, why are the writers striking, how does that affect viewers as well too, what does that affect the content as well. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit because during one of the polls I had asked folks if this was a topic people wanted to hear a little bit more about, and so I did get some positive reinforcement about that. So I just want to talk to you a little briefly today about what is the latest on the writer's strike? What is the strike? What's going on? How long can we anticipate it's going to go on? And if it's anything like current history, the longest strike was 153 days. The last time we had a strike, I think it was in 2007, was 100 days. And I think this one's shaping up to be a little bit of time. So I'm going to take a look at an article from the New York Times. And let's talk a little bit about why are the writers striking. So every 3 years, the East and West branches of the Writers Guild of America represents almost about 12,000 writers of TV and film. They negotiate a new contract with the major Hollywood studios. Now, television production has grown rapidly over the past decade as media companies have invested billions into streaming services, but the writers have said that their compensation has stagnated. WGA leaders have said the current system is broken, arguing that the survival of writing as a profession is at stake in this negotiation. I think also one of the things that the union might be concerned with about is also how ChatGPT is being used and other AI things as well too. I don't know if that's actually going to get into the negotiations, but I know that was one thing that I had heard from some people that the union was worried about. And so, as always, when you have a work stoppage, there always is going to probably be a pretty wide gap between the two, and that's what we're seeing with that. Is that they're far apart on many things, and so let's take a look at their issues before we see what this is going to do in terms of what it does to our favorite movies and shows like that. Now. There we go. The writers have had several issues that were vital to them in the negotiation, including putting guardrails up about artificial intelligence. One of the rumors I have heard is that studios are using artificial intelligence right now to deem whether a script is viable, so that if you submit a script to a studio, they will run it through an AI, and if the AI doesn't like it, you're automatically kicked out. So that's one of the things that I know some writers have told me about. But as always, especially with the union and a business that the union is with, a lot of it is financial, which isn't a surprise because to believe it or not, writers aren't paid, in my opinion, very well. And the other thing too is the studios have been really have pulled a lot of shenanigans, which we're going to read about here, on how they treat and address writers. Now, they've argued that the streaming world has eroded their working conditions. Many streaming shows have 8 to 12 episodes per season compared with the more 20 episodes made for traditional TV. You might say, well, so what they do with that, because it is less episodes, is they'll cut the pay for folks. So that the 8 to 12 episodes, too, might not get you through a whole year. 20 episodes might get you through a whole year of writing. And in this particular case, 8 to 12 won't. And so people are looking for that next gig. And writers don't always get picked up right away from project to project. So there's a lot of times when you're writing, especially for TV, you'll have one project you'll get done with, and you'll have a lot of time before your next project. And so, especially when you only have 8 to 12 episodes, what happens is you don't have that sort of bankroll in your bank to cover you until the next project. And here's someone that says another typical writers are fighting for better residual pay, a type of royalty for reruns and other shows, which they say is a critical source of income for the middle class writer who's been upended by streaming. And so again, here we go with businesses. They are not going to, or the studios, I should say, don't want to pay their employees what they're worth. And so this is obviously with the writers. You want to have good writing, you need to pay your writers. And we see that in terms of them cutting them out of the royalties because they wrote the shows. You wouldn't have that award-winning TV series or movie if you didn't have the writers there. The studios, in my opinion, tend to forget that. You also have these mini writing rooms. So Now, the hard part about that is no one can agree on what a definition of a mini writing room. But as we look here, but in one example, a mini room is made up of a small group of writers who have been hired by a studio before a show has been given an official green light. But because it isn't an official writer's room, the studios use this as a justification to pay writers less. I've also seen that the studio, if the show doesn't go, will not pay the writers at all. They'll say, "Oh, sorry, since there's no product, we don't have to pay you." So again, I think that's very dubious by the studios. It's very underhanded by the studios, and I think it's a wonderful reason why the writers should be striking. Another thing with the mini rooms, they'll sometimes work as little as 10 weeks, and then you have to scramble to find another job. So I think a lot of times, too, when people are thinking of going into writing or Hollywood writing, you think you get on one show and that's it. That show might be going on for several years. And especially if you've seen from streaming and you've seen all the cancellations within the different TV shows and streaming shows, you can see there's not such a solid future. And so it's stuff like this which will help writers, especially those middle level writers, be able to keep an income and keep being able to do what they need to do. Now, what do the studios say? It's just basically, I just love this piece. It's not the best time for a major change in how writers are paid. Of course not. We want to keep making all our millions of dollars. We don't actually want to pay the people that need it, or who made sure that we have these wonderful shows and they have wonderful ideas. Why would we pay for that? And I get it that it's not, and I get it that's a hard season for networks and broadcasters. However, like I said, you want to know the reason why we have such bad shows and stuff is they don't have good writers, and stuff like that. And, it's funny that they're happy to pay all their executives a high amount of salary, but heaven forbid, that we don't see that with writers. And speaking of that, I want to show you just how much disdain that studios can have for writers. Now, this comes from last week. There's a joint statement from the WGA and the Directors Guild of America, the DGA, regarding the max credit changes. So one of the things, I don't know if when you watch a movie, watch where the writer shows up. Now, when I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3, one of the last credits is for James Gunn as director and as writer. But if you watch most of your movies, the writers are not really close to the front of the credits. It's interesting that the person or people that come up with the concept for the show and basically build that foundation. I'm not saying actors and directors aren't a vital part of that, but we so often miss out on those writers who really create that foundation for a good story to give something the writers and the directors can do with. But yet we don't acknowledge them. How many times have you seen in a movie trailer, from the writer of, it's always the director, it's always the actor, it's the producer. We don't often see it's the writer, and the writer is the one I think that should get a lot more credit for what they do. But getting back to this point, so what happened with this was that Max has decided to change the long-standing individual credits of directors and writers in the new rollout. So let's see if I can find this. Okay, so we'll highlight this paragraph here. So for almost 90 years, the Directors Guild have fought fiercely to protect the credit and recognition deserved by directors for the work they create. Warner Brothers Discovery's unilateral move without notice or consultation to collapse directors, writers, producers, and others into a generic category of creators in their new Max rollout while we are in negotiation with them is a grave insult to our members and our union, said DGA president. This devaluation of the individual contributions of artists is a disturbing trend, and the DGA will not stand for it. We intend on taking the strongest possible actions in solidarity with the WGA to ensure every artist receives individual credit that they deserve. So this is interesting that the studio, Warner Brothers Discovery, decided to change the way that credits get rolled out and just lump everybody under creators. I don't understand the backstory behind that, But I do see why it's a slap in the face, because this is how things have been going for 90 years. If they want to change that, it would have been nice for them to talk to the writers and directors. But that's how I feel a lot of times, that the writers and directors are sort of seen just as movable pieces for the studio, and they don't understand what kind of value they bring. I think you're seeing right now the lack of value that we're getting because they don't have good writers and good directors, and they're not taking care of these folks. Look and see what happens because we're having a writer's strike. And here's again the last writer's strike in 2007 was 100 days. The longest strike in 1988 was dragged on for 153 days. And to be honest, I don't see this strike going early or ending early, especially because the studios are whining about, well, we can't pay the writers that much. Well, it's interesting that the people that are producing the content for you to make money, you're not interested in paying them what they're worth. And writers don't make a heck of a lot of money. I mean, they make a good living, but they're not making millions and millions of dollars per project like actors or directors do. They make a fair amount of money. And again, I think that's funny and ironic that the person that really sets the foundation for the story, for the movie, for the television series, is not making anywhere close to what directors and actors and stuff like that. So if you might be wondering, so what does this mean, Paul, in terms of movies, television shows, that type of stuff? Well, for movies, we don't have to worry about that so much because films are sort of worked on a year in advance. So most of the movies scheduled for release this summer have already been shot, or for this year have already been shot. If you want to know about TV networks and streaming services, you will notice if the strike is prolonged, viewers will begin to notice a dip in the new TV series, though this will not become apparent until the end of the year. Reality series as well as international shows will begin playing in heavy rotation. So if you notice when you're watching TV, you see a lot more reality shows, which I always think is a really misnomer too, because those are really scripted as well too. Soap operas, already an endangered genre, will run out of new episodes after about a month. So we're probably getting into the close to the time where we're not going to see any new soap opera episodes. The other thing is, how will the strike affect late night shows? We've seen that they've all gone dark. Now, before the strike began, Mr. Meyer said, if you don't see me here next week, you know that there's something that is not done lightly, and I will be heartbroken to miss you as well, too. So you can sort of see that's sort of what affects what has been going on and how the reason why the writers are striking. So the big takeaways from this is that the writers want to get their credit, like their credit in the movie to say, hey, this is a writer. They want to keep that in the movie. They want to be paid royalties like a lot of other people within the industry does. They're not asking for anything new or extravagant. They're asking for fair compensation, fair royalties, just like directors do, just like actors do. Again, these people help create these wonderful programs, and yet so often that the studio system just sort of bashes them and doesn't allow them the proper respect and proper pay that they deserve. Do I sound biased in all this? You bet I am. You know, having seen what some of my writer friends have gone through, being on Reddit boards, hearing other videos, hearing the other hard parts of getting into the industry could be a lot kinder to writers than what it is. So I'm really hoping that WGA gets what they need out of this. Will they get everything they need? Probably not. I think there's a room for compromise, but I also think, and I'm happy that the WGA is taking the stance for writers, because for too long, writers have been not taken seriously. Well, I hope this video today helps you a little bit understand about the WGA strike. As more stuff comes up and more items come along, I might do just a little shorter update videos for you, but I hope this will help you understand why the writers went on strike, how that affect our viewing habits for right now. And if you have any other questions, put them in the comment section below. Until the next video, live well and write well.